Welcome back to another episode of Chasing Labels. I am your co-host, Stephen Billings, and with me, as always, is Andrew Cabral. We're back for episode, what is this, spy number 36?
It is indeed.
Yes.
I almost didn't remember. Thank goodness you put it in the show notes this time.
Yeah, well, you know, usually I forget. I forget the number, and I almost, in my back of my mind, thought this was 35, but then I was like, no, that was the indicator. 36. Okay, I got this one. But I'm Stephen Billings, this is Andrew Cabral, and we are back to talk releases again, and also spotlight another guest. With us,
yes, we are.
With us today is it's almost been, I think the only other graphic designer we've had on, artist, was Scott Saslow, which I think our guest knows, and so it's been a while. So finally, we got another artist back on, and she is out there on the West Coast also, and she's done a variety of work with almost everybody. Her site shows off. I was like, it's easier to say what she hasn't worked with, who she hasn't worked with. It's right. Amazing. But she'll tell us more about herself. Drusilla Adeline, or AKA Sister Hyde. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Doing good. Good.
I mean, there's a few labels I haven't worked with yet, but
tell me,
like
because it doesn't look like it. Looks like you've worked with everybody.
I mean, I haven't worked with Oscilloscope. I haven't worked with Shout Factory.
Yeah,
but maybe one day.
So, is it a goal? Or is it a goal for you to just work with them at least once? Everybody.
I want to play like home video bingo. Like, I got to get them all.
Nice.
I guess BFI is on the list too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done Criterion, which that was the big one. I still work with them plenty. I work with Arrow. I work with Severin, Vinegar Syndrome partner labels, Altered Innocence, Fun City editions. I'm working with Mondo Macabro, Mondo Death Waltz. Yeah, who else?
See, I said, she can't even name them all.
Yeah, 88, Severin.
Yeah.
I've got a
Syndrome.
Yeah,
I'm just reading off from your website. That's why I know this.
I'm sure there's others. I have a shelf. Every time I work on a release, the great thing about it is that you get a comp of the release to keep, and so I have a shelf of all of my pieces that I've done, and I'm so crazy in love with that, and it's expanding by the day. I need to get a second shelf.
Are you very ready? Are you very protective of it? Like somebody come over and they start looking at it, you're like, don't touch them.
Oh, it's the opposite. Someone comes over and I'm like, hey, have you seen this?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, Drew, we've seen your Menace to Society cover. I'm like, yeah, but did you see how it slides out? And like, yes, we know. And I'm like,
there it is right there. Andrew's got it.
Yeah, there it is. Right now. People at home can't see it, but I have it right next to me because I just have surrounded by movies constantly, as many listeners know. So I just pull out things
also,
randomly.
I can do the same thing, Andrew. Look at this. Bam.
Oh,
bam.
you got the nip slip.
Oh, yeah, of course I do.
Yeah, I got to get...
Yeah, guys,
maybe
I know
you should just ride for people at home.
You can't see what happens because this is an audio podcast. I did not show my nipple at all. It was the cover for the movie Pals.
Goodness.
It was the cover for the movie
Pals.
Nice. But
which happens to be a nipple. Yeah,
that is very true.
Yes, but Sister Hyde, tell us your origins. We want to know where your love of movies came from. Tell us that mysterious origin that is in your little biography on your website that I read. I don't want to read it because anybody can go read it, but tell us in your own words, where did it all start?
Okay, well, first of all, my website bio is just fiction. It's fun, but it's fiction. It's cute though. It's enticing. It gets people to email me. But so I'm from the Midwest. I grew up in central Indiana, late 90s, early 2000s. And, there's not that much to do. And then on top of that, in like 8th grade, freshman year of high school, around that time, went through a rough time. And my resource in salvation was two things. One, the 1998 edition of the New York Times Guide to the Best 1,000 Movies, which I stole from my middle school library.
They deserved it.
And I would just flip through it every day and read There's that sound.
Yes.
And read reviews of movies I'd never heard of, like, what's this Raging Bull? What's Reservoir Dogs? What's Taxi Driver? What's Last Year at Marienbad? I don't know. Sounds cool. I want to see it. And then my public library in town had a gigantic selection of movies. And so I started watching movies by the directors I'd heard about growing up. I started watching Scorsese and Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez and Kevin Smith and Wes Anderson. And liking all those movies and watching all the extras, then you hear about blaxploitation movies like Jack Hill films and Pam Grier films. And then through Wes Anderson, I heard about Buñuel, and I heard about Renoir, and through Martin Scorsese, I heard about Rossellini and David Lynch, and I would just go to my library and start renting things that they talked about, and then watching those, and then noticing that, hey, a lot of those open with the Criterion Collection logo. Okay, cool. I'll go on their website and see what those recommend, and then see what else the library has with those logos on them, and then, hey, I like this Bergman guy. Oh, he likes Victor Sjostrom from the 20s. I'll watch some of his movies. And it really spiraled there. And really, there's a lot of art house stuff. A lot of art house and international stuff in 14 through 18. I watched as much French New Wave and German Expressionism as I could get my hands on. Italian Neorealism and just insane stuff. So by the time I went to college for experimental film direction, I was really into Kenneth Anger and Guy Maddin and Maya Deren and really, 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 really weird shit. And then I came out of that, moved to Los Angeles, and got more connected into the horror scene. And through a weird circuitous turn of events, landed a job as an editor at a company, and they didn't have anyone doing their design work. So I just started doing that on the side. And then that became my job. And then I realized, I've always loved all these home video covers. I've always loved and collected vintage movie posters. It'd be cool if I could just turn this into that. I'm just doing streaming key art, but it's not that far off. So I took a note from my friend and your former guest, Scott Soslow.
Nice callback.
Yeah, right. And did a poster a day project on my Instagram. So designing a fan art poster every single day for a year. And I was like, Scott did it. I can do it too. And look at him. He's doing all this great stuff right now. And I did not think about how much work that is. But I did it. And then the following year I went freelance and created the Sister Hyde label as a nod to Hammer and queer horror. And my first home video client was 88 in the UK. And then I worked with Kino, and then started doing posters for indie filmmakers and people like Yellow Veil and Shudder, and I've been really, really spoiled and lucky to be able to work with these great labels that I've collected for years, and these films that I've loved for years, and to work under these filmmakers that I'm obsessed with, like David Lynch and Martin Scorsese and Mel Brooks, and have them, have final say over the work I'm doing. And then get to work with art directors and other artists like Eric Skillman at Criterion, or Jay Shaw, or, some of these really awesome people, Sam Smith and Brendan Schaefer, that I've looked up to for years and years and years. And I learned how to do this by reading their blogs and process stuff from 10 years ago or whatever. And now I chat with them about projects, or we work with each other on the same projects. And it's really weird and surreal.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm crazy fortunate.
It's amazing. It's amazing to, how many times you hear people talk about how they kind of stumble into something that they end up loving. Sometimes people try so hard to do a thing and then they don't make it, and then they give up on things and they just fall into something they don't like. But a lot of times you hear people just, they start doing one thing and they just find their calling, just kind of, keep trying. And also I hear a lot of people say how much their love of movies is combined with the artwork of like seeing the fronts of VHSs and the fronts of DVDs and things. That's like, I think we heard that with Justin Beam. Justin Beam talked about that a lot. Brad Henderson, I think, talked about that a lot from Vinegar Syndrome, that the covers are very important.
They're very important to me, and they were my gateway into international cinema because, like, again, growing up as a teenager in the Midwest, you don't know who Fellini is. You don't know who Giulietta Messina is, so seeing either of their names on a cover doesn't tell you anything or sell you anything. With, like, true romance, you can be like, oh yeah, from the guy who made The Hunger, and starring Christian Slater and Brad Pitt and Christopher Walken. Cool. These are people I like. It'll be a film that I like. Awesome. With art house cinema, and especially non-genre cinema, there's like no foothold for American audiences to get into this other than like word of mouth and kind of critical appraisals and stuff like that. Someone saying, oh, it's so great, but there's very little to like draw you in outside of that. So you get these crazy posters, you get these beautiful DVD covers, especially the work that Criterion does. And my first kind of footsteps into art house cinema were all through what covers I thought looked cool.
Yeah.
So I saw the DVD covers for Eyes Without a Face by Aesthetic Apparatus, and then the 2 Criterion covers for Buñuel's Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie and Phantom of Liberty, which are based on the old Rene Ferracci posters, which are collage pieces of lips with legs and a bowler hat, and then on Phantom,
it is.
It's an anus with ostrich legs and in this pose like the Statue of Liberty with a crown and a wilting torch. And so I thought these were the funniest things ever, and I didn't know what the movies were going to be, but they had to be close to that, right?
Yeah, it's just, I'm glad that they kept consistent with that style for the Buñuel stuff. But I guess, as good a transition as this is, just a few questions. One is, when it comes to working with these labels, kind of pulling back the curtain here, do you contact them, or do they contact you, or is there a specific, you see what they're coming out with, and then you're like, oh, I have an idea for a cover for that. How does that kind of process all unfold? Is it different for everyone?
I wish it was like that. I wish Criterion came to me and said, these are the movies we're doing. What do you like? And I could be like, let me do that. I wish. Oh, I wish. It's not that way. It would be super, super cool if it was. I mean, like, I guess, like, people like Mondo or print people like that, it's more like you come to them, talk to them about the kind of stuff that you want to work on. They see what kind of licenses they have, and they come back and say, okay, well, we have like these 3 things. They fit with your tastes. Let's go for that. So that's pretty close to that. But mostly with labels, when I was first starting out, I cold emailed a lot of companies being like, hi, I'm a person. Look at my stuff. Maybe consider me. And, that gets you in the door, and then you don't get an email back for like 7 months until they have a project that you might be right for, and then bring you in on that. So my first gig was with 88, and I cold emailed them, and they said, well, we don't commission a lot of stuff. This was like pretty early on. They were mostly just reusing a lot of posters at the time. But they'd started to bring in like Graham Humphreys and a few people. And they're like, we don't know if your stuff will fit for us, but we'll give you a shot anyway. We're doing Pets and we're doing Terror Train, if you know either of them. We have no materials for either film. Send us whatever you think would work. We're not obliged to use it, but if we like it, we'll run with it. And I was like, that's better than a no.
Yes.
So I did Pets first because I thought it was more lurid and I think it was higher on the calendar. And just kind of went wild with it. They really enjoyed it. It's a very suggestive image. It's a photograph of my own leather boots, and then a tongue licking them. It's a like 70s exploitation lesbian BDSM film, so
You got to go. You have to go out there with it.
You gotta lean
you
into
really
it.
do.
And they enjoyed that enough to give me the green light on Terror Train, and we had a good time. But with most labels like Arrow or Criterion or most of those, they, we form a relationship somehow, or there's a title that they think is perfect to me and they reach out. And then from there, any new titles are typically like, I'll get an email from, let's say, someone at Criterion, usually their art director, Eric, saying, hey, we're doing the Elephant Man. Do you want to do the Elephant Man with us? Here's all of our thoughts on what we think is going to work for that. Here's David's thoughts on it. And here's the studio legal requirements of like, you got to get John Hurt's name on the same scale as Anthony Hopkins. And it's all the type has to be all that. So it's usually stuff like that. However, if I hear through the grapevine that someone is releasing a film that I love, I might reach out and be like, hey, consider me. But that's rare because people are pretty guarded with their titles kind of for that reason. So
that seems to make a lot of sense. I mean, just because you mentioned the Elephant Man and just because I'm just a gigantic David Lynch fan, I would love to hear about how that all came about in terms of, like you saying, you don't usually contact them, or they don't usually contact you in terms of like, here's what we have available, just go for it. Was the Elephant Man different? Because it was such a big title that was so anticipated for many, many years, and Criterion had been rumored to put it out for, years upon years. Yeah, for at least a decade. Back to the DVD era of Criterion, people were hoping for it. So was that kind of a big personal thing for you? Because you mentioned you like avant-garde cinema and stuff like that. For me, David Lynch is kind of a king in that area.
He really is. And the Elephant Man is very special and important to me because there was a point in time when I was in junior year of high school. I had been expelled from my high school, and we've got to get into that later, or not at all. And I was starting at a new school.
You've already brought it up now. Now I got to hear it. I need to know that now.
It's a long story. It was none of my doing. It was involved a relative of mine. It's whatever. However, the second school I ended up going to was much better. Not that I would know this at the time. So I was very depressed. Not into this at all. Felt like my world was crumbling. And I had put a request in like a month or so before for my library to get a copy of The Elephant Man out for a week, right? So it finally comes in my first week at this new school. So that entire first week, I had The Elephant Man out from the library for just a week or whatever. And every single day I'd come home from school, put on The Elephant Man, bawl my eyes out, because that movie's freaking sad.
Yeah.
Turned it off, go do my homework, go to bed. Next day, go back to school, come home, watch The Elephant Man. So 5 days in a row, that was my introduction to that movie. And I just kind of like fell into a little loop with it. And I love it so much. So I'd already worked with Criterion and Martin Scorsese on the set of his short films with them. And then like a month or so after we wrapped that, they reached out to me again. And it was literally the subject line of the email was Elephant Man. And I woke up to that email and I was like, okay, how quickly can I say yes? This is all I want to do.
Yeah, a complete no-brainer for you to take that opportunity.
Yeah, it was a dream. And it was great. And I'm really, really proud of the work that we did because we did a lot of different pieces for it that didn't end up seeing the light of day. But the very first thing that I did on the project was that I took another look at like Fred Davis's covers for some of their other Lynch releases and the cover for Eraserhead and stuff like that. And I was struck by like, okay, they do new pieces for every single one of his films, but they're always rooted in the old one sheet. especially like Eraserhead is a great example where like it's the one sheet image and composition, but it's a new painting.
Yeah.
Or Fire Walk with Me, where it's the same idea and the same composition, but it's a new take on it, and it's cleaned up, and it's the locket and the fire produce a bit more of a heart shape, and it's really beautiful. So my first idea for Elephant Man was, okay, what if we redo the composition of the original poster, but kind of more in my style? So something a bit grungier, something a bit more like rooted in like 80s punk era graphic design and collage art and stuff like that. And they were like, okay, cool. If you want to, you can do that. But we think some of these other ideas could be really fun too. So we did a lot of pieces on that. We got some really, really beautiful and weird things together that kind of leaned a bit more into like the, British period film that it also is. And we presented them to David, and he came back being like, yeah, I like the original poster.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool.
Going back to square one.
Yep. So we went back to that comp, and I just polished it up a little bit. And that's all hand painted in Photoshop. I own the original one sheet for the Elephant Man, so I had that hanging up, and I use that as reference for the lighting and the texturing. But whereas that's like period hatch illustration, which again is crazy appropriate for the time, I went with like an 80s aerosol brush, so there was like a bit grimier, a bit chunkier texture to it. And that way it also captures the like heavy grain and mist and fog in that film, because it's the same visual language he was using in Eraserhead. And that's something that people forget about that movie, because it's kind of looked back on as being less like Lynch, a bit more like The Straight Story. And for most American audiences, it's known as like a Hollywood Oscar bait biopic movie. To a degree.
Yeah, I can understand. Yeah.
And so I wanted, and that's kind of how Paramount has distributed it and discussed it beforehand. So I wanted to bring it more into the kind of textural world of Lynch's films at the time. And so we did that. And so that's all hand painted. And then the great thing about taking that approach to it was that I was then able to make corresponding portraits of Anthony Hopkins and some of the other cast members for the digipack fold out. To kind of keep it all in universe, which was really nice.
Yeah, speaking of some, you bring up, some of your designs that don't necessarily see the light of day. What are some of your favorite ones that you've done that you were like, God, I really wish they would have let this be the one? Like, yeah,
There's a few killed ideas that I've had over the years. One of the ones I did for the Scorsese shorts one was really fun. That was like a silhouette of Scorsese's head that had him within it, kind of like he was filming himself almost. It looked really, really nice, and they loved it, but Scorsese preferred the kind of photo collage city instead. Which I don't blame him. I think that also looks really, really good. I did a bunch of different covers for the box art on the Fassbinder collections for Arrow, the 3 volumes, which the third one has been teased but hasn't been fully announced yet. Can't wait for that to happen, because it's amazing. The titles in that are fantastic. But so the final piece is kind of a cast collage of his recurring players that kind of connects through the 3 boxes. But my initial cover presentations for that series were these beautiful, I think, kind of slightly less than naturalistic oil paintings of characters from each of the films. So for instance, volume 1 would have just been Petra von Kant and so it's mostly red, and it's this very over stylized depiction of her. And then volume 2 would have been Fassbender as Fox from Fox and His Friends. And they had these very clean, modern, very widely kerned typefaces on them. And I thought they looked super clean, super classy, really leaning into like the Douglas Sirk melodrama angle to Fassbender. And while Arrow didn't go for that, they went for the more kind of collage cast direction instead. I did reuse the proposed cover for volume 3 in that style as the cover art for one of the films in volume 3. So at least that's still alive and kicking somewhere.
Yeah. And so from that, I know we're on a podcast, and I know you've worked on some podcasts, and you said, I think you teased us off mic that you are actually going to be hosting something again too, right?
Yeah. So I produced Dead for Filth for years with Michael Verratti, which is a great queer horror podcast, and produce and edit It Listens from the Radio, which is Brendan Haley's narrative horror podcast, which is so much fun, which is coming back for a 3rd season soon. But I have a new podcast on art house horror film called Bloodhouse, spelled like Bauhaus, Haus, co-hosted by Joshua Conkle from The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina and Serious Unfortunate Events.
Oh, okay.
Who's a good friend. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm really happy to be behind the mic again. So it's going to be a good time. That's dropping very soon.
Nice. And so would that be like on all the major platforms, Apple and... Okay.
Apple, Spotify, yeah.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, anything else before we move on to our announcements?
I'm thinking, as I always am.
We don't ever prepare like you'd think that we'd be more professional and have questions, but no, we like to conversate like naturally and see where the conversation goes.
Oh, agreed.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I as things are, I always say that Steven's more prepared than me. Maybe when it comes to interviewing guests and stuff, Steven's very much the face of the podcast for the most part.
It's mostly hair. It's like half beard. That's
Very
not,
true.
It's not good,
Well, if he's the face, then you're the body. So
Well, I mean, I
guess
can
so.
tell you, he's the
It's a
mind.
Frankenstein.
He's the mind because he gets more. He says I'm more prepared. He's really more prepared than me. I'm just maybe it's just easier for me to talk to people. Andrew, I think, gets in his head a little bit. We're not going to get into the psychology.
Yeah, I'm not very sociable if that's the term.
Though he talks with me every week. Yeah, so
yeah, I'm
understandable.
I'm an introvert, cinephile with, social anxiety disorder. So it's like
you're not alone.
Yeah, very true.
Introvert
Very
cinephile
true.
with anxiety. That sounds like most cinephiles.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yeah,
redundant.
it really does. Most that I've met. But in terms of just your backstory and getting into kind of, indie cinema, foreign cinema, all this kind of stuff. You've talked about queer horror. I mean, once upon a time, one of my ideas was to do a whole episode of our previous podcast, Cinema Discovery Project, on queer cinema in general. And I know that's a whole big thing in and of itself. And, I just wanted to ask you, has that been, a big inspiration for you in kind of delving into queer cinema? Because as I've learned over several years now is that, one, it hasn't been talked about a lot in terms of mainstream cinema up until now. And two, just, finding those films and being aware of those films has been so difficult for so long that I'm really liking this kind of renaissance of people going back and, watching a lot of, queer cinema that was kind of swept under the rug in, 80s, 90s and all that kind of stuff. Has that been a foundational stuff for you amongst all of this other stuff? Because you have such an eclectic, a background of being a cinephile. I don't know how I want to say that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I kind of like everything from the trashiest to the sleaziest to like the artiest. Right. So there's very little that my favorite movies jump between like The Devils,
nice,
the Ken Russell film, through like Alan Arkish's Get Crazy to Ocean's 12 to like Almodovar movies and like Carell and like last year at Marienbad, and like it's just the ping-ponging through all of that kind of stuff. So there's very little that doesn't land into my realm of wanting to watch it.
That's the kind of the best part of being a movie fan is there is so much endless possibilities of stuff you can get into or stuff you can be exposed to when it comes to major genres, subgenres, genres off of genres. You know, there's so much endless stuff. And what I find so fascinating about your backstory just in general is finding those, kind of coming across it on your own, I think is unique, because I know a lot of people usually have outside influences pushing them towards movies and taking them to, you know, cinemas and theaters and all that kind of stuff. And especially late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of that, you know, that stuff you were talking about wasn't exactly readily available around.
No, it wasn't.
That's an era
I was very, very fortunate to have a library that had that much stuff, because if it wasn't on like, I don't know, AMC or TNT or something like that, then I didn't really have access to it. I was so lucky that the like DVD and VHS selection in my library was pretty dense, pretty thorough. But I didn't really even get into, you know, the deeper subgenres and stuff, or even much into queer cinema until college and a little bit after, because it was both a mixture of like internalized shame and also not knowing a bunch of everything. So like as a high schooler, I would see like the DVD for Almodovar's Bad Education on the shelf, which has that great like Diego Luna like ripped cover. It's not Diego Luna, it's the other guy from Me Too Mama Champion.
Is it
Diego Luna?
It's not Diego Luna, it's the other guy. Anyway.
Gail Garcia Bernal.
Yes, it is Gail.
Yes.
So I would always see that and be like, I really want to watch that, but there's no way I'm gonna take that up to the counter and like, and so that was
I can
always
understand that.
However, I rented My Own Private Idaho in high school, not knowing what it was, just being like, oh, River Phoenix, Keanu Reeves. This looks like Flea's in it. This looks like it'll be like a fun 90s kind of like alt thing. And I very vividly remember my older, very homophobic, very racist, very like, you know, Indiana good old boy brother walking in halfway through that movie during like the famous like love confession over the bonfire, and I was like, I'm screwed. Oh god. So it wasn't until later that I, you know, intentionally delved into that, and I think I even avoided Fassbinder for years because of that too. But then, you know, free off in college to go explore these things, it was very important that like, cool, I'm gonna do Almodovar now. I'm gonna like do all of those movies. I'm gonna do Gregor Rocky, and I'm gonna do all those kinds of things. All those 90s kind of. But the really interesting thing is there's a lot of queer cinema from like the 30s and 40s and 60s and 70s through like exploitation cinema, or like deeply buried and coded, intentionally buried and coded stuff in the 30s and 40s that's like very much there, like every Hitchcock movie.
I was gonna say Alfred Hitchcock's Rope right away, like that movie
Rope,
is
Rebecca,
notorious.
Suspicion, Lifeboat, Psycho, every Shadow of a Doubt, every single one of them, like every single one of them has it. It's insane. Even like his British stuff from the 30s, Murder. It's beautiful and fascinating. The way that stuff is weaved through those. Especially like, and the amount of stars from that era that were closeted, like Cary Grant and Marlena Dietrich and Joan Crawford and Marilyn Monroe, and and how much of that like bleeds into their persona and into their performances. Like Danny Kaye's whole thing in White Christmas about not wanting to get married to the like most beautiful woman in that movie. Okay, okay, Danny Kaye. I know you got eyes for Laurence Olivier. Got it.
Yeah, and I constantly bring up Rock Hudson all the time. Not just because a lot of his movies are finally getting Blu-ray releases, and I'm just trying to scoop up as many as I can. And for me, Rock Hudson is such a prime example of, closeted, of course, because of the time in which he lived in, but the way in which he's portrayed on screen is this super masculine, hunk of a man, the leading man, and the whole time, he is, a closeted, homosexual. And, obviously that would be really later on in life and tragic way his life ended. But I'm always been a big fan of Rock Hudson, and a lot of those actors and actresses, like you said, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, prime people that you knew were, had, diverse sexuality when it came to their identities. And a lot of them, they couldn't be outward with it, but that was the time, which they lived, unfortunately. But it's so fascinating. Once you dig down deep into that stuff, there's a lot of things that you discover as a film fan that you probably didn't know of before. And it's just, there's an endless like spider web of fascinating things about cinema in general.
And the amount of like macho men from, especially like Western stars from that period. Randolph Scott was gay. Burt Lancaster was bisexual and also like potentially trans, which is interesting. I was told a story by a friend of mine who passed away a few years ago, produced the film Kiss of the Spider Woman, which is an amazing film. Really, really beautiful. You should definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. It was an Oscar winner. William Hurt got his Oscar for that movie, and Raul Julia's in it. But it's based on a queer novel from a Brazilian writer, and the main character in it is a trans individual. And my producer friend who produced the film was gay, and he met Burt Lancaster at a party. Burt Lancaster had read the book and loved it, and he's like casually mentioned that he had the rights and was producing a film, and Burt Lancaster cornered him later that night and was like, I need to play that character. I'm going to help you produce this movie, but you have to promise to let me play that character. And he was like, why do you want to play that character? And Burt like kind of came out and confessed to him and was like, they would go to like drag shows in New York together, like in the like late 70s, early 80s, with Burt Lancaster in drag most nights so that no one would recognize Burt, and like showed me all these Polaroid photos. Oh my God, it was the best.
Incredible.
The best. And he ended up dropping out to do Local Hero around the time that they finally got the funding to go make Kiss the Spider-Woman. And so he was heartbroken over that. But Lancaster was the one that recommended William Hurt, because he'd seen William Hurt in Altered States, which insane to think of Burt Lancaster watching Altered States.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so
it's nuts. But like, especially with Rock Hudson, like Douglas Sirk knew.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
he cast him for a reason. Hitchcock knew about Anthony Perkins. That's why he cast him in Psycho for a reason. Same with Wells. Wells knew, was why he put him in the trial. Like,
well, going into like right before we get into our announcements, like a good transition. We know you probably get all, like you said, get all the stuff from all the labels, all the stuff that you work on. But how much more do you buy outside of what you work on?
Oh, so much. I feel bad because it's like, I get paid by these labels for doing this work, which is great. And then that money goes right back into those labels.
Yeah.
I just did work for Severin recently, and I immediately turned around and put all that money back into Severin's sale.
Yeah.
So, I have as you can see behind me right now, a pretty healthy amount of Criterion discs. But then, I collect vehemently from Arrow and Vinegar and Severin and Shout and Second Sight and BFI and, Discotheque and tons and tons and tons of labels.
Yeah.
So,
well, before we transition, I got one more question. other than the stuff that you've worked on, what is one of your favorite recent Blu-ray pickups that you've gotten?
Oh, I have to say, I am madly in love with Severin's All the Haunts Be Ours
Oh yeah.
box. I mean, from a design perspective, it's gorgeous. Luke Insect did such a great job, but then also like the amount of work and research that Kayla did to first of all, to make that documentary with Lynn Stark and Days Bewitched, which is amazing. It's one of the best horror docs ever. But then the licensing fee that she and the Severin team went through to then license all of those films, to then restore as many of those films as they could, and put them together in such an essential package. Insane. Nothing like that has been done ever before. It is a massive undertaking, and we should all be so lucky. I mean, I'm glad that a lot of those films are now being streamed on Shudder.
Yeah.
So you can kind of sample some of them there. But I strongly recommend that everyone, especially horror fans, pick those up. But I mean, even in the state that we're in, we're getting so many big A24, kind of modern art house horror films along the lines of like Midsummer and Lamb and Hereditary and The Lighthouse and all that stuff. Anyone who likes that stuff needs to pick up this set, because all of those artsy folk horror movies like Eyes of Fire and V and that's all based on that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I picked it up myself. I know Andrew's probably been thinking about it for a while.
I want it badly.
Don't
I
think,
want it
get.
I tell him that all the time.
I know. When we covered it for the show, I dove into a few of those films that I could find, and it was just like, yeah, I can't wait for these films to be in, better condition to watch, because they're stunning movies. They just needed the care.
I'd been sitting on a laser disc of Eyes of Fire for years, and it's the only version of it I had, and I loved it so much, and I was just like, I know this movie could look beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
but it looks so gnarly.
Yeah. Well, if anybody is still having a hard time needing a reason to buy that set, just go back to our episode with Andrew Furtado where we talk about it, and he'll convince you even there. So, but that was a great conversation. Great to learn more about you. And let's move into announcements. You ready to do this? I know there's a lot.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Let's do it. Where do you want to start, Andrew?
First up, I'd like to start just with a little announcement, or maybe a little pre-announcement, for people this week who got super excited. I mean, we were just talking about David Lynch, so we might as well bring it up. And this was kind of rumored, kind of a long time coming. The idea that Criterion will be eventually putting out a Blu-ray version of David Lynch's currently last, feature film directing, credit, Inland Empire, which I know I've had on a used DVD for many, many years and just dying for a Blu-ray. I think Janus Films announced that he's working on the remaster for it, as well as the sound for it as well. Hopefully we get an announcement at some point, but it looks like it's coming up eventually. So they have it, in their catalog somewhere. I think that's super exciting.
I think she knows. She knows she's putting on a good face. Drusilla, are you doing the work for this?
Oh no! I wish. Oh, I hope.
It would just be.
I hope they.
I
come
can
to
imagine
me.
the bunny rabbit images.
God, it would be so fun. I know it's screening at the IFC Theater in New York in April, so tempted to book a plane ticket.
Yeah, I wish we had more. Like, I live in North Carolina, and we don't have a lot of them, like, special screenings and stuff. I just wish I lived closer to an art house cinema. I mean, we have, like, one, but it doesn't get as many stuff as other places, so. But, yeah, this is actually one Lynch film I have not seen. So it's one I need to check out. But
buckle up. It's 3 hours of terror.
Yeah, I was going to say, it may be his most Lynchian insanity ever.
Okay.
And that's what makes it so great.
Yes.
That's what makes it so great. But yeah, I mean, I think it's the only Lynch right now that doesn't have a Blu-ray release. If I'm just going off the top of my head,
That
especially
is
since
correct. Yeah, Straight Story just got
especially
the Australian release.
yes,
So it's the only one.
yeah, and Dune just got like a big re-release from Arrow a little while ago. His early stuff has gotten released. I don't know about his shorts yet. I know some of them show up on a couple of the Criterion releases. I'd have to go and look.
Most of
But
them are available on the Eraserhead release from Criterion, but I think some of the
that's
more
where they are.
recent ones
I know Netflix
still aren't available.
Netflix
Netflix has
yeah.
the monkey short.
The monkey one, yeah, and obviously if you're a big Twin Peaks fan, they've released that a number of times now on Blu-ray over the last couple of years, and I'm still holding out for maybe more Twin Peaks eventually, but I don't know. It would be something nice, but it's such a monumental, I think, accomplishment for him and things to do to bring that show back. But that's just me. I'll talk about David Lynch from now until the end of time.
Don't put it out there because as much as I like it, I have that nice box set, and if he has to release, if he makes more, then that box set becomes not complete anymore. You know?
Oh, which one? The Z through A set?
Yes.
Oh, that's the one I bought them individually, and then they came out with the Z through A set with more features and stuff, and I was like, damn it, damn it.
Yeah, so don't put that out there. As much as I like it, don't make them mess it up. So, but all right, well, moving on from that,
Yes,
let's do a couple of we have a single release here from Cohen Media Group, Jigsaw from 1962. I know you said you had got a chance to watch this, Andrew.
I did get to see it. 1962, directed by Val Guest. It's a British film that is a murder mystery.
Okay.
It's basically these detectives, they are looking into something else, and they end up finding that a woman has been murdered and her body has been dismembered, and they find it in a trunk. I mean, obviously it's 1962, so you're not really seeing anything. It's just all implied. It's all implied. But the movie, you go through and see kind of their investigation and the people they're looking for and red herrings and all this kind of stuff. Kind of a British neo-noir, I would say. And yeah, I thought it was rather engrossing and entertaining. And Cohen Media Group is kind of an underrated label, I think. I know they've done a lot of work over the last decade in so many different areas. I know they've been putting out these Buster Keaton collections, these 2-movie Buster Keaton collections, and they just put out, well, actually not just, but they put out a volume 4 in late 2020. So that's something that's interesting. They also put out The Old Dark House, which is the James Whale film, which is a great horror film. I love it.
I think it's the Eureka release of that. I believe.
Yeah.
I think that they put it out in the UK. But Drusilla, have you seen this film?
I haven't, but I'm a fan of Val Guest, and I'm a big murder mystery fan. I'll probably be picking this up. I definitely want to watch it. I do love Cohen. I love their Merchant Ivory releases, and they finally saved Pandora and the Flying Dutchman, and they brought Tristana to the US. So yeah, I love them, and I will definitely be picking this one up.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything right now announced in terms of special features that I can see. But I do know it's coming April 5th. And it's going to be distributed by Kino Lorber, because I think Kino Lorber and Cohen Media have some distribution deal now. Because I was just able to get Alfred Hitchcock's Jamaica Inn on Blu-ray. That was a Cohen Media group release from years ago, and it went out of print for a long time. And I bought it from Kino's website during one of their sales, and I was just like, is this real right now? Is this actually happening?
Yeah,
I remember this thing going for like $100.
Cohen put together a home video distribution deal a little less than a year ago, which I'm very excited for. Kind of what they're doing with Code Red and places like that. Because a lot of those Cohen discs, they did like pretty limited pressings of, like Old Dark House, like Jamaica Inn, like Howard's End and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden they were just gone and missing.
Yeah.
And like The Skin with Burt Lancaster is a great film that just like went away and like you couldn't get your hands on it. And so I'm so happy that, the Cohen library has been refreshed through this kind of new deal with Kino so that you can get your hands on these movies because they're great.
Yeah, their library is very limited. Like it's small, but their restorations are very, very good, and they're putting out movies, you know, that you can't find anyplace else in this type of quality. So I'm super, super glad.
All right. So next, let's talk about the. Let's go into a whole other direction. 88 films.
Oh,
Yeah, I surprised you there.
sweeping
Yeah,
to the other side of the
yeah,
spectrum.
88 films.
Violently.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Sorry, sorry. Hope nobody got any whiplash. But they got a good slate here. More than actually, I think we initially a couple of these got released online, and then I think because they got leaked online, the rest of them had to come out, and me and Andrew just noticed the rest of these today. So we have a good group here. We have Romper Stompers getting a 30th anniversary deluxe collector's edition. We have Violent City, Stone, which I think is the same film Severin just reissuing their Blu-ray. They just announced that.
A classic Ozploitation film.
Yeah. And then we have Hero, Human Lanterns, Half a Loaf of Kung Fu, which is another Jackie Chan film they're putting out. Revenge of the Dead, and then the collection of Species films. Which I don't. I like the first one. Okay, I think Andrew said he put himself through the rest of them.
Why?
That's what I said. I said, why did he do that to himself? I don't know.
I watched 2, 3, and the fourth one, which is Species: The Awakening, back to back to back the other night in the wee hours of the morning.
And he had bad dreams the rest of when he finally.
Not so much. I'll tell you this though. The movies are not shy about alien and human sex scenes.
No, they are not.
They are not.
But anything, Drusilla, anything stand out here that you're really excited about?
I mean, I'm always excited about Telly Savalas and Italian genre cinema. So Violent City,
okay,
definitely excites me. I was approached about doing Romper Stomper with them. And I considered it for a while, but I didn't really want to work with that much Nazi imagery.
Yeah.
So I'm glad the film's getting a good release because it is an important film. But I passed on that.
No,
yeah, understandable.
Yeah, definitely.
Considering our current times, very understandable.
Yeah, it's a tough one. But I'm very excited for Stone. I'll probably get the Severin release, just because I love that slipcover that just focuses on the type and. Honestly, for that reason alone, though I love 88. And I need to see Human Lanterns.
Yeah.
They've been doing so much of the, Fortune Star licensed Asian cinema right now, and they've been getting all of those great, really hard to find horror films out of there. And so I need to see Human Lanterns. It looks like a ton of fun.
Awesome. Andrew, anything here other than your favorite movies, Species 2 through 4?
Other than Rompers, I'm glad to see Romper Stomper getting some type of deluxe release, because for years I know it's been on YouTube for the longest time, and that's not the best of qualities. It's an early role for Russell Crowe. We mentioned it, I think, several episodes ago. Steven, I think you remember when we mentioned it. Yeah. I think when we talked.
When we were talking with John Matthews from,
yes,
he's from Australia, and we were talking some Australian cinema,
we were, and I know there's been a lot. We just kind of joking about it a little bit, but there's been a lot of buzz about the Species collection box set. I mean, good for them putting it out. It is a 4-disc box set. Each movie is getting each movie is getting special features and all that kind of stuff. And I know here in the U.S., I think Shout Factory had put out Species.
Scream Factory put out all of them.
Yes, that is.
But as individual releases.
And I think some of those releases are now out of print.
Most of them are, yeah.
I think at least for 2 and 3, I think those are. So I know the first one you can still buy a collector's edition from them, and always excited to get more of that. I'm assuming that Half a Loaf of Kung Fu is a Golden Harvest film. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming so. There seems to be some type of arms race now between 88 Films and Arrow and Eureka to put out as much Shaw Brothers and Golden Harvest stuff from the 70s and 80s as possible. And it's like every month we're just getting more and more stuff. And it's just great that all this stuff is getting a resurgence and a surfacing now.
And I could not
be
happier about it. And yet my favorite Shaw Brothers movie still hasn't been announced yet.
But do you?
Nice.
Okay, well, maybe it's. I know we'll probably get an Arrow Volume 2.
It'll probably the Duel is the one that I love.
Yeah,
and it's probably going to take until Shaw Brothers Volume 5 for that to happen.
Gee.
I hope
It
it,
is
I
not.
hope it
It
goes
is
that
not
long.
that beloved of a title, and the legal licensing issues on it would be a nightmare. But
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the 88 films titles, and now let's move. I'm gonna pull you. I mean, we're gonna stay in the same area.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna pull you over to the BFI.
Oh yeah, still in the same geographical
Yeah,
area.
yeah. So it's not too bad. You don't have to pay for airplane tickets to come back over here. But this is a little bit different set of films. So we got a large group of movies, but these are spanning across the next few months. Some of these are June titles, April titles.
All of the 88 films were all May titles.
Yeah.
If anyone was interested.
So we got, and some of these you'll notice are already available, maybe through Criterion or some other labels. But some good stuff in here. You got 400 Blows, of course, the if I could speak, Francois Truffaut film. Also, I hear a lot of people talking about this film, The Appointment, which I haven't seen, but I hear it's kind of like a culty classic, maybe. And then you have the 1984, which I think is a pretty well known. I think that also came out through Criterion, right?
No, that's the 50s
different adaptation.
Version. That's the 50. Okay,
this is
that's
the 50s version.
Okay,
yeah.
okay, all right. And Faithless. Then we also have Jules and Jim. That did definitely come through Criterion. The Men, The Soft Skin, The Last Metro, Lawrence of Bolivia. And then we have
Belgravia.
Thank you for correcting me. Yeah, you don't know this, but I'm the worst at pronouncing things on this show. I basically have like 5th grade reading skills. So
I honestly don't correct him anymore. I just let him go.
Well,
with
it just becomes comedy. It just becomes comedy that I can't read, and I'm okay. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But and then the last one here is, and I think it's funny enough. I think one of the Indicator guys talked about working on a set of this back in the day. If I'm not, the Alan Clark, back when they did like a DVD set, Descent and Disruption, Alan Clark at the BBC, 1969 to 1989. So I think maybe one of our Indicator guys maybe worked on a set like this back in the day. But yes, Drusilla, anything here excites you?
Well, I mean, I'm very excited for the 50s version of 1984 because I've heard about it for years, was never able to see it. The Appointment sounds very fun, and they both come with new Matt Needle artwork, and I always love him, so we'll definitely have to at least check those out. The Men sounds interesting. I mean, it's Fred Zinnemann and Stanley Kramer and Brando and Teresa Wright, so like, I've never heard of this movie before, but it's got a lot cooking for it. And Jen Diozzo's art is always a selling point. The Truffaut films are amazing, but I already have all of them, so
Same
should
here.
be good. Should be good. I haven't seen Faithless, but it's a new Liv Ullmann film, and it's based on old writing by Bergman, so
Yeah.
it should be interesting. Her previous directorial efforts haven't been the best, but they're good.
Yeah. All right. Andrew, anything here that's super exciting for you?
Yeah, I can definitely endorse the 1984 this adaptation because I did end up getting to watch it in time for the recording today, and it's actually a very faithful adaptation of the source material, 1984 by George Orwell. This has got to be one of the most adapted books of all time, as well as kind of tangentially adapted books of all time. Like, they'll take the premise and then like reinterpret it into different ways.
Like, I mean, Brazil.
Yeah. Anything that has to do with some type of totalitarian government in a dystopian world, chances are they took it from either Aldous Huxley's Brave New World or 1984. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
And this adaptation was actually a television program on the BBC did in 1954.
Not long after the book was published.
Yeah, the book was published in 1949, so like 5 years afterward. And it actually wasn't even the first adaptation. There was one done on television in 1953 as well. But this stars
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing and Donald Pleasance. For some reason, I couldn't remember Peter. I was hoping I remembered Peter Cushing's name, but I was like, I almost
Tarkin.
yeah,
Okay.
Tarkin. But this is young Peter Cushing and young Donald Pleasance. I mean, they're still recognizable, of course.
This
but,
is around the time that they were both doing Hammer films.
Yeah,
So this is
this
very
was-
exciting.
Oh man, yeah, right around when, the Hammer horror stuff was starting in the mid-50s. I was trying to think of when Horror of Dracula started. I think it was
54.
so around the same
Yeah.
time. It's really, really good. I watched a really bad quality version of it on YouTube, of all places, and this has got to look millions of times better.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I'm very, very curious to see what type of restoration and what type of money they put into this. It is coming in a Blu-ray and DVD, dual package, so you can have it either way. But there are some really great special features. I mean, I think for a lot of listeners and for a lot of cinephiles, chances are they have these Francois Truffaut films in some type of version.
Yeah.
There's a good chance. The Men I've actually seen because it's, I think, Marlon Brando's first ever film that he was in, and directed by Eli Kazan, I think. And no, Fred Zinnemann. Fred Zinnemann did it.
Yep.
And yeah, basically, Marlon Brando comes back from, I forget which war, and he is a paraplegic now, and he's having to deal with kind of all of that, stress and all of the stuff that goes with that in terms of his life radically changing. And I think Teresa Wright is a love interest for him, so they're kind of having a difficult time with one another. This had a Blu-ray release, I think, from Olive Films back in 2013, so it's been around for a few years.
Yeah.
But it's a good dramatic film. Early Marlon Brando, before he did Streetcar, before he did On the Waterfront, but in that same era. And yeah, those are definitely the highest priorities for me in terms of interest. But the Descent and Disruption set looks incredible.
Yeah.
And I know this is actually a re-release of a limited edition one they put out in 2016. And there's a little note down here that says that this reissue is not featuring a couple of things.
Okay.
It's not featuring The Road from 1987, and it's not featuring or the collection of half-hour stories from 67 and 68. Those are included on that 2016 set. So for anyone who has that 2016 set, hold on to it because it's more complete than this one.
Yeah.
But I find that interesting because apparently Alan Clark was someone who was very much bucking against the system, and kind of a tangential connection here. He did a TV adaptation of Scum in 1977,
Mm-hmm.
and people may think that that's the same.
Is that not the same?
It's not.
Okay, I was going to say, is it not the one
Yeah,
that
the one he
Indicator
did in
put out?
what happened is that Scum that he put on TV in 1977 was banned because it was so, the censors didn't like it in Great Britain. So he was like, screw it, I'm going to make a movie version of this so that people can see it. And I'm going to make it even more brutal. So that's what he did.
That's great.
And I was just like, oh, very interesting. So if you have Scum, the Indicator release, this is a different different version of that movie, I believe.
Okay. All right.
So just to make that clear. But yeah, that's the BFI. We don't get a lot of BFI stuff, so all this stuff is kind of spread out in like April and June and
Well,
all these kinds of times.
one thing I wanted to bring up too, and maybe this is just my suspicions, but one thing to note here before we move on is that some of these Truffaut films, especially like 400 Blows and stuff, they're getting new restorations. I wonder if
I saw that too.
that's going to take
what's
away
coming.
the idea from. I mean, obviously they're region free, so does that mean the Criterion is either getting the chance to put them out in 4K?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Want to hear from
I
our guest?
imagine there
I'm
will
pretty
probably
sure.
be a Truffaut box set coming soon.
Oh man, yeah.
I could
Considering
see
that there's all those MGM Truffaut titles here in the States that, since Twilight Time lost the rights, are still now
they're all
up in the
out
air,
there.
like Mississippi Mermaid and The Bride Wore Black and Small Change. Yeah, so
Yeah.
hopefully we can see a Truffaut box the way they did for Fellini soon.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would not be surprised, especially the 400 Blows and Jules and Jim. I think that those would get standard regular 4K releases,
Mhm.
just like we got recently with a couple of films, just because they're so
iconic.
They're so quintessential, iconic. Not
so
even for
tied
French New
so
Wave.
closely with the Janus Criterion brand. I mean, since the release in the 50s. So
how many times has 400 Blows gotten a release from Criterion?
I know.
It's gotten DVD.
It's had
Blu-ray
3 separate
twice.
DVDs.
Yeah, and there's at least 2 Blu-rays releases. I think of it.
Yeah,
it's
because it was also
one
their
of
first dual
ones.
format titles when they went for dual format.
I always bring up the dual format titles because I love them so much.
Same.
And was upset when they got rid of them. So every time they bring them up, I'm always like, oh, what could have been? Ironically, now they brought them back with the 4K releases.
Yeah.
So I got my vindication.
Yeah.
I was right this whole time.
All right. Well, now let's get into our last couple. Well, I mean, it's all under Vinegar Syndrome, but we're going to do Vinegar Syndrome proper and then the partner labels last. Andrew, do you want to run down the stuff here?
Sure. I'll give you
Since
a
you can
reprieve.
pronounce things better than me.
Well, yeah. Well, it was interesting. There's no difficult pronunciations this time.
Yeah. Well, I like to try the hard ones just to see what happens.
Gotcha. just to test the waters.
Yeah.
So we're getting from Vinegar Syndrome proper is a release of 4 titles, I believe.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Drop Dead Fred, Sister, Wolfpack, and Beware, Children at Play.
Sister's that show, right? That's it. No, I'm just kidding.
You'd be surprised when you had to Google it how many times that showed up instead.
Yeah, I know, right?
This is actually, I think, Bill Condon, the director. I think this is his first
debut.
film.
Yeah.
His debut. Most
I
notorious
love
for
this
doing.
movie. I love Bill Condon.
Oh, nice.
I love Bill Condon's Twilight films.
I was going to say
great.
he's most notorious for doing the last 2 Twilights.
No, celebrated for.
Yeah.
I mean, I associate him with Gods and Monsters.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Yeah, he's fabulous, and so this movie is delightful, especially if you like some kind of Southern fried surreal weirdness. Is definitely one worth checking out. And the cast is insane.
Well, I mean, if you go from that to like his recent, didn't he do Beauty and the Beast? So it's like,
yes, he did.
Yeah, you can go from this to watching Beauty and the Beast and see his whole spectrum. Just,
oh yeah, you can. Yeah, and like he did Dreamgirls, he did Kinsey.
Yeah.
He did one of the Candyman movies. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of throwing that in the mix.
He'll do anything. I love it.
But yeah, this was his first film, and this is like a Southern, like gothic film, just like swooming in melodrama. Very interesting film. The film stars Jennifer Jason Leigh,
Eric Stoltz.
Yeah. It's an interesting movie. I would recommend
sweaty.
people.
Sounds sweaty.
It's set down in Louisiana. Down there.
Yeah.
It would make a killer double feature with Paul Schrader's Cat People.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're kind of right around the same time, kind of have that hazy, weird, sweaty, almost erotic feel to them in a way that's like fucked up. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's always, there's always like the score's like over rambunctious and just like it's very fascinating. And it's getting a brand new 2K restoration, so it's gonna look great. There's 2 audio commentaries, so they're putting in some serious work into it.
Vinegar
New
Syndrome
art by Haunt Love. It looks great.
Yeah, they always did. That's Vinegar Syndrome does that the best. Is they put in the effort on the restoration, like on everything.
Yes, they do.
These movies have never looked better, and they probably never will look better.
Yeah.
I never thought that Pandemonium would look as good as it does.
See, I watched one of the recent things I picked up, that Sinister, which is a video, like a shot on video film, and though shot on video, I'm like, dude, they had to do tons of work to get this to even look watchable. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah.
But it's
shot on video in the 80s, I assume.
Actually in the 90s. Actually, I think that's a 90s
okay,
film.
I was off.
But it was, but one of the ones we can talk about Drop Dead Fred because, that was originally going to be a Severin release, and I hate to bring up that tragedy because that kind of sucks, but it's, I wonder, we're probably never going to know, but I wonder what happened for it to go from one U.S. label to another U.S. label that are very similar. I guess maybe something fell through. Who knows? I don't know.
I think it might have something to do, and I'm speculating because I love Severin and I work with them a lot, so I don't know. But I'm speculating it might have something to do, considering the rights holder for that film with their Jaws-related slipcover and book having to be pulled.
Mm.
It might have
yes.
something to do with that,
Okay.
I think.
Because they put out, didn't they put out Jaws 5 in quotes?
Yeah,
Yeah,
one of the
I remember
Italian
that.
sharksploitation films. And
Okay.
and it had been billed in Italy as Jaws 5.
Yeah.
And they offered it as like a limited site only slipcase. And then that went away.
Yeah, that sold out really
Yeah.
quickly.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll never probably. That's good
We'll
speculation.
never know the real
but,
reason.
But I actually got a chance to watch this new restoration. Like I got a clip. I got to send a screener, and it looks great. It looks good. And so I enjoyed this movie. I don't. Have you, Drusilla? Have you seen this? Have you seen Drop Dead
I
Fred?
love this movie.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
great film. I'm
Yeah.
so happy that it's back in circulation. And I love it's a movie that I never thought either Vinegar or Severin would ever do, and both of them having kind of, put their stamp on it is so funny and kind of exciting to me. Because I mean, this was out of print for years, and it was
Yeah.
like one of those infamous titles along with like Freddy Got Fingered that like it's not only a very obscure weird movie from that time, but it's also like impossible to get on disc. So I'm glad that this one is getting a good, loving cult Blu-ray treatment.
It's got great art too. I love the kid
Yeah.
drawing on the black top, and then I love it. It's great. And then I know one I really wanted to watch this because it looked interesting. But I know Andrew was telling me about it. Wolfpack, high school fascist things going on. Like it sounds really interesting. Tell us about Wolfpack, Andrew.
Yeah, well, I mean, talk about appropriate times. So Wolfpack basically takes the idea of like kind of the fascism, the rise of fascism, puts it through the prism of a high school, specifically through the football team basically rising up and becoming like a fascist entity where they just start like controlling things going on. They start like putting down like and eliminating like, the ideas from the other groups in the school and stuff like that. And it's a really well done version of that. Like the concepts are really, really fantastic. And it just kind of shows, how something can snowball into something truly horrific and terrible. And it's kind of fascinating how this movie came out. This movie came out in 1987, I believe. Great year. And it's rather appropriate now considering our world and its political state and the fact that there are literally fascists having rallies and protests and nonsense like that in our real lives.
Yeah.
And it's like, this cautionary tale of a low-budget film from 1987 set in a high school can be actually relevant to 2022.
And
so
from
I
a
found
porno
that to be
director,
interesting.
no doubt.
Yeah.
Just to add that in.
Just to add that in. It's a fascinating film. I'm glad that it's getting a brand new 2K restoration because the version I watched was, I'm pretty sure, in the wrong aspect ratio. It looked like it was probably ripped from maybe a DVD or a VHS or maybe even recorded off of television for all I know. And it didn't look very good, but I'm just curious to see how it's going to look. And yeah, I was very surprised. Of all the releases, this is probably the one that I'm most interested in, personally. Although Drop Dead Fred is getting quite a deluxe release.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I do like that.
Have you seen Wolfpack, Drusilla?
I haven't, but I really want to. And
Okay.
it's the most excited I've been for a VSA title since they did an Adamant film. So
And the last, and then in the last one here. But has anybody seen Beware Children at Play? Because
I have.
of course you
It
have.
is
Of course,
It's a trauma film.
Well, I love trauma.
Sold.
It's a trauma film that has an ending that is got to be so controversial for even when it came out. Like it's a wild film.
Cool.
There's even at least the version I watched, there was a Lloyd Kaufman intro where he was like, we were at Cannes Film Festival for some other, I think it was for like Romeo and Juliet or something, and we showed the trailer for Beware Children at Play beforehand, and people walked out. And I'm like, that's about right for Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah.
And yeah, this movie is fascinating. It's basically what's happening is these children keep disappearing, and the adults like can't find them, and it's just happening randomly. And there's murders happening as well, and and it turns out there's some cult activity going on that's may or may not be connected to the legend of Beowulf and stuff like
What?
that. It's trust me, I don't want to say anything else other than that.
That's just
'cause
how it always
that may
happens.
be too much.
It always happens that way.
That may be too much. And the ending of this movie is like, holy crap! Like,
Right.
wow. Yeah, this is going to be interesting to see what they do to make this look good, because this has got to be like VHS quality when they made it back in the day. I mean, Troma is notorious for low budget filmmaking, so
Yeah.
if people are interested in Troma and yes, Troma in better quality, this is for you. I think they've been doing that a lot lately. I think Vinegar Syndrome's been putting on a couple of Troma films.
Well, I know
Mhm.
Troma's been putting out their own stuff too.
Yes.
Lately.
Yes, they
Yeah,
have.
so that's cool. All right. Well, that's it for the proper stuff. So let's go to the partner labels.
Yes.
And I think our guest here has actually done some of the work on this list, maybe.
Hey.
Yes.
Yes, I have.
Yes.
All right. Well, run us down here, Andrew.
Okay, so from partner label, Connie, I guess, Caney is Cain and Abel. And then from partner label Fun City Editions, we have Belitis or Beitis?
Belitis.
Okay, glad you corrected me on that.
Haha, Andrew
then
messed up.
I know. You know what? I was trying to pronounce it the way they pronounced it in the movie. Of course, it's in French, so that was what I was kind of trying to go with. But from partner label Deaf Crocodile, which we talked a little bit about recently, is Delta Space Mission. And then
I think
from
Scott
partner label,
Saslow did that one. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think Scott
Oh, did
Saslow
he?
worked on that.
Oh, he did. He did post
Yeah,
about that. Yes, he did. And then from partner label Culture Shock, The American Scream. And then
Hot Love
from-
again on the great
yeah.
artwork on that.
Yeah, it really is. Yellow Veil Pictures is Blood on Her Name. And then Big World Pictures, I Do Not Care If We Go Down in History as Barbarians.
That's
Who does?
that's the catchiest title ever.
Yeah,
And
no,
it
just
has
rolls right off the
one
tongue.
of the best covers this entire month by my friend Derek, who does a lot of great Vinegar Syndrome covers, but this is
Uh-huh.
like next
Oh,
level
yeah, I see it
great.
now.
This is like Mondo
So
Criterion
minimalistic.
level great.
Oh, wow. I'm just noticing what it is now, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of brilliant.
Yeah.
It is totally brilliant.
Mm.
Derek is the absolute best.
And then we, from partner label Decanologue, is the lottery ticket / a month in Thailand. So it's a 2-pack of films. And then from Saturn's Core is Red Spirit Lake / We Await, another 2-pack of films. These are both done by the same director, one from 1993, the other one from 1996. And I think he has director Charles Pinion, I believe is the director.
Mm-hmm.
And the next we have from partner label Factory 25 is Ham on Rye. Sounds like a sandwich, which I think it is.
Yes, it is.
And then label Circle Collective is Quiet City / Dance Party.
More Scott
then-
artwork.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, that's another two-part collection as well. Then from Altered Innocence, we have Hypnosis. And then label Gunpowder and Sky Tragedy Girls.
Yeah,
Again, more Hot Love art.
Wow.
It's a
Yeah,
good
the,
month.
Yeah.
the artwork for these, once again, for all of, whether it's Vinegar Syndrome straight up or whether it's from their partner labels, some of the best artwork you'll see, some of the most inventive and, really unique artwork. So, where would we want to start off, Stephen? I guess we'll start off with our guest, I assume,
Yes.
because they worked on one of these.
Yes, Drusilla,
Oh, yeah.
tell us about the
We
release
can
you
talk
worked
about
on.
Belitis.
Yeah.
I love Fun City Editions. I love working with them so much. Jonathan Hertzberg is the best. And I've worked on every title with them since Walking the Edge. So I mostly do the cover art for, a handful of them. And then other stuff where they bring in like We Buy Our Kids or Jacob Phillips. I'll just do the layouts and the restorations and stuff like that. But I'll also do packaging and booklets and things like that. But on Belitis, we did sort of what we did on Radio On and adapted existing artwork and standard film assets and photo shoots and stuff like that. And whereas with Radio On, we adapted it into like the look of a cassette tape. For Bilitis, because this is like maybe the sleaziest film Fun City has put out, it's much more in tone with Vinegar Syndrome's usual audience, so I think they're gonna love Bilitis. It is a beautiful French kind of sapphic softcore film, with a script by Fat Girl's Catherine Breillat. So
nice.
It does have an art house quality to it, starting Warhol's Patty Darbenville. But so it's styled after old Meta VHS tapes, which they're the ones who put Bilitis out as a big box tape in the 80s. And it's not here on the Vinegar Syndrome site, but if you check out Fun City's Twitter, you can see the other VHS inspired artwork that we did for the sleeves, both front and back. The front sleeve is based on the old Columbia Pictures tapes from the 80s and 90s, and the reversible sleeve is based on the Warner Brothers tapes and laserdiscs from the 70s and 80s. So it was a ton of fun to do. This movie's a delight, and you know, it can have some of the more skeevy elements to it that some of the softcore films from that era have, but the special features that they got on this, like the audio commentary by Alexandra Heller-Nicholas and the booklet essays and stuff like that, are really, really, really great and do such a great job of contextualizing this film. And I think Fun City is just knocking it out of the park lately. And finishing your collection up with Radio On, Morvern Collar, and Bilitis.
Yeah.
What an
It's going to
eclectic
be
group.
ideal.
We agree with you. We're big fans. I actually just completed my Fun City editions, limited
Not
editions, just recently, and also, you know, they just, you know, they just keep, like you said, knocking it out of the park with the selections are diverse, yet, you know, also just you can tell that he's going for a certain style, and we're actually going to have, we're planning to have Jonathan Hertzberg on in April, so we'll get to talk with him more. But
they've got some pretty awesome stuff lined up for the rest of the year, and I'm very excited to see some of it, because they have at least one film by one of my favorite directors that is getting its first US HD release, and I cannot wait.
Oh man, great tease there. Somebody's going to try to decipher that.
Good luck.
Yeah, I know. She talked about some of her favorite filmmakers earlier in the episode, so let me choose one of them. And
it's one I've mentioned on this episode, so good luck.
I mean, yeah. You have such a wide range of favorites and things that you love that it would be hard to pin it down.
Yeah.
Even if we knew your entire
not discussed that
history.
Often, so it'll be
awesome.
When it comes out, then I'll be like, "Hey, that movie." But,
yeah, there you go. We'll know it when it happens.
I'm very excited for Bilitis. I think everyone should check it out. Fun City also has a vinyl release out this month that's already sold out.
Oh wow!
And it's Cafe Flesh, the Rinse Dream film from the 80s, speaking of softcore, from the director of the 89 Dr. Caligari, which both that and Cafe Flesh should be getting discs soon here in the States, but not through Fun City. I believe Mondo Macabro, potentially. But that soundtrack is amazing. I think it's still available on cassette from Fun City over at their site, but the vinyl's already gone.
Yeah.
Tragedy Girls is a lot of fun, especially if you're a fan of slashers. It's a really fun modern slasher. It would pair very well with Freaky, the Christopher Landon film. It's tons and tons and tons of fun. Or like Scream 4, maybe. Ham on Rye is great. I highly recommend it. I'm very excited to see Hypnosis. It's like one of the few Altered Innocence titles I haven't seen before. But I love them over there. I love Frank. I love that whole kind of films they've been picking and films they've been releasing. And, you know, European art film about hypnosis, I'm sold. Yeah. I don't need to know anything else than the title and that it's from Altered.
Yeah.
That's all I need.
Awesome. Andrew, anything here that you're? I mean, I would say definitely. I mean, obviously, Fun City Editions. This
Yeah.
Cain and Abel movie interests me a little bit because that story gets retold in all for a long time. That story's been retold in many different ways, and this looks like some kind of random action movie from the 80s that takes the Cain and Abel.
I mean that cover.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, it's
definitely
Lena
sells it.
Braca, who is one of the biggest Filipino directors
okay.
ever. So I think it's gonna be a pretty amazing little film. I'm very excited to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's the first. Release from this new company, this new partner label. At least from what I'm reading here, Connie. It says named after Yasujiro Ozu's custom-made Tatum-level crab-like tripod. Connie is a new home video label dedicated to leveling the gaze and furthering the understanding of Asian cinema in North America.
Okay.
Yeah, have me sold. I like that.
I'm a huge fan of Lena Braca's Manila and the Claws of Night.
Okay.
So him doing an 80s action movie? Yes, please. From this like very measured, restrained art house filmmaker.
Yeah.
Oh, I really want to see it.
Yeah, it says there's nods to Sam Peckinpah's Straw Dogs. So yeah, that's
I'm sold.
yeah.
Yeah. They're dropping all the names that you're dropping on here. So
Yeah.
very much interested. Bilitis is definitely also because it's a Fun City edition. I think that's kind of an automatic now. But also because I did get to see the movie beforehand, and I'm just very curious to see what it's going to look like with the new 4K restoration because
It's gorgeous. It's so gorgeous.
It has such soft, cinematography in it, and it's so dreamlike in its approach to this story that it does, like I have those soft core elements to it, but it's also a coming of age film. Very similar to like Call Me by Your Name or something like that, but done in, a more risque, 1960s, 70s French style art house film.
It's an interesting choice for Fun City because it almost feels like an Alternate Innocence title.
Yeah.
It really does. It really does.
It feels like it should have the Anus Films logo.
It should. But I did get to see the American Scream as well, and that is a fascinating movie. It's so weird and odd, and basically like this family goes on this vacation and they end up in like this kind of backwoods country town where there's no kids around for some reason, and the locals are very odd people and they're treating them weird, and the kids are trying to like figure out what the heck's going on, and it has an interesting ending, I'll say. Interesting ending. Blood on Her Name I actually watched last night. This is a recent film. Film is from, I think, 2019, 2020. And I was watching it and I'm like, it's really, and I was like, and I was surprised to see Will Patton is in the film. And I think Will Patton is one of just like the best character actors, working, for the last 30 plus years. He's been in big blockbusters. He's been in television. He's been in so many different things. And I was like, oh, wow, he's in this movie. And it was really, he's not the main character or anything. Basically what happens is a woman commits a murder and she tries to cover it up. But of course, complications ensues and you're not really sure what's the connection between her and this individual she's killed, and you're just trying to piece things together. It's very low key. It's low budget, and it's just kind of minimal dialogue and stuff like that. So you're kind of just going along on this journey. I thought it was rather solid. It's a rather bleak kind of film as well. So if you're into bleak films, Blood on Her Name is a quick one for you too, because it's only 90 minutes long. But Stephen, is there anything else that you were looking at on here that piqued your interest?
I like I said, I didn't get a lot of chance. I don't get as much time as you do, but we kind of covered a lot of the stuff I was really interested in. Cain and Abel, Bilitis, and I know, like I said, Scott did the art for Delta Space Mission, is an animated movie, and it
I'm
looks
very excited for that one.
Yeah, it looks fascinating.
I do like the cover. I do
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it, but just the cover is drawing me in here. So, but But yeah, if that's all we have, that is it for our episode this week. Drusilla, thank you for coming on. We thank you for taking the time to geek out with us on some Blu-rays and to tell us some of your story. And I hope you had a good time.
Yeah, I did. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, and we'd love to have you back someday. So we can definitely, when you get your podcast going more, maybe we can bring your if they're willing, bring your co-host on too to join us, and that'd be nice. So where's the best place for people to find you if they want to talk to you?
You can either check out my website, which is sisterhydedesign.com, or you can hop over on Instagram and Twitter. My @ is Hyde Sister, and I'm all over there. Yeah, and I should have some new covers coming soon from Severin and Altered Innocence, and maybe even Criterion. So,
whoa.
Very nice.
Keep your eyes out in the next few days, weeks, months, years, millennia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Kevzilla06, as well as the Chasing Labels YouTube channel, Chasing Labels.
Yep.
Kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I know, right? And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings, or at the other Chasing Labels pages, whether it be Twitter or Instagram. You can find the audio for the podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify. Thanks again for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.